Go, Donna.
Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Morristown area, I'm pleased to welcome you to our virtual forum this evening for Chatham Township Committee. I'm Donna Gariglia. I'm a co-president of the League of Women Voters of the Morristown area. The League is a nonpartisan political nonprofit that works to empower voters and defend democracy. Founded 100 years ago, we make democracy work by protecting voting rights and encouraging robust participation. We are committed to providing fact-based information about issues and the positions candidates take on those issues. Our goal is to help voters make their own decisions and participate in our electoral process. We envision a democracy where everybody has the right, the knowledge, the confidence, and the opportunity to participate. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes candidates or political parties. Any use of the League name or footage from this debate in campaign materials, literature, or advertising of any kind, including internet, social media, cable, or television, has not been authorized by the League of Women Voters. Co-sponsoring this evening, we welcome the Morris County NAACP. Their mission is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. We look forward to our continued work together. If you would like to participate in any of our efforts, the League actively seeks diversity within our membership. You must be 16 years old and a U.S. citizen to be a voting member. Associate membership is open to everyone. We also encourage everyone to go to vote411.org, which provides a one-stop site for information of all aspects of voting in New Jersey, as well as information about all candidates up and down the ballot. All of our forums are being live streamed on the Morristown Area League of Women Voters YouTube channel. If you have questions about voting, mail-in ballots, or in-person voting, visit lwvmorrisarea.org for our educational webinars. All ballots are being mailed, and if you haven't received yours yet, you should contact your county clerk's office. You may return your ballot through the mail in a secure Dropbox location directly to your Board of Elections or to a polling site on Election Day. If you go to the polling site on Election Day to vote in person, you will be asked to fill out a provisional paper ballot. Future confirmed forums include October 23rd, District 25 State Senate and Assembly, and this Saturday on October 17th at 2 o'clock, the League of Women Voters is sponsoring our RBG Legacy Rally at the Ducret School in Plainfield. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Sharon Steinhorn. Per League practice, Sharon is not from our voting district. She's a League-trained moderator from the Western Monmouth League of Women Voters. She will now introduce the candidates and outline the format for this evening.
Thank you, Donna. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, as you know, we will be meeting with candidates for the Chatham Town Council. There will be 4 candidates on your ballot vying for 2 positions. They are here to meet you virtually, of course, to tell you why they are running and to respond to your questions. So first, let me introduce your candidates. And to the candidates, when you hear your name, please give a little wave to your viewers. We have Ami Shah, Phil Uncle, Ashley Felice, and Mark Hamilton. These candidates have agreed to the following format. There are 3 parts to the forum. First, each will have a 2-minute opening statement. Second, each will have 1 minute to respond to questions, and rebuttals are allowed for 30 seconds, 1 rebuttal per question, so we can keep moving along. And the third part is each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. And we do have a timekeeper that will hold up a yellow card when a speaker has 30 seconds left. There it is, thank you, left to speak, and a red card which tells them time is up. And I ask them to stop speaking when they see the red card. Certainly finish your sentence, but that will be it. The order of speaking for their opening statements has been randomly decided before going online tonight. And so let's begin. The first speaker will be Mark Hamilton. Mark? Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading. Right.
That wasn't what we decided.
Right. The first speaker, right, we did this, will be Ashley Felice. I'm sorry. Ashley got the #1 pick.
No problem. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to participate tonight. I'm Ashley Felice. Years ago, my husband and I chose to make Chatham Township home for our 2 daughters. We were attracted to the township because of its unique charm, safe neighborhoods, excellent schools, and low taxes relative to the surrounding towns. My background is in business and law. I started and successfully sold a multi-location small business I had worked hard to grow. My training and operations of this business are the cornerstone of the skills and experience I will bring to the committee. I created jobs, managed budgets, made payroll, and negotiated strategic acquisitions, all while fostering growth opportunities for my employees. About a year ago, I became active in the local government of the township after news broke that our committee had voted to give away our municipal building. At that time, I thought a major change like that would be announced prior to a final decision. I then discovered that ordinary business decision type questions had been ignored, such as what is the value of the land? What is the cost to build new? Where do you put a new municipal building and what will come of the senior center? The committee did not have answers. It was evident they needed help and our township needed strong voices to advocate for better decision-making. Mark Hamilton, myself, and many other residents went to work gathering answers in order to find a better solution. By lobbying the committee, we convinced them that the municipal building plan was a bad one, and they moved the development site to an equally bad, environmentally sensitive plot on the steep slopes of River Road. Mark and I did not walk away. We helped the residents of that area convince the committee there were still better options. Ultimately, with residents' help, we were successful in convincing the committee to move the development site to 522 Southern Boulevard, the Charlie Brown site. We believe this is the best spot for the development. However, challenges still lie ahead with that site. Chatham Township needs committee members who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work. Mark Hamilton and I have proven we are those candidates as we have advocated for all the residents for the past year.
Thank you. And next will be Phil Uncle.
Thank you. So Chatham today is a tale of 2 signs. The congratulations on a high school graduate sign and the for sale sign, which all too often appear on the lawn at the same time. But first, thanks to you, Ashley, and you, Mark, and you, Ami, and to our organizers for this great event. So why do I mention the first sign? Our schools are great and our volunteer community around those schools is unparalleled, whether PTO or boosters for sports and music and otherwise. And that's how we consistently get those great college signs, right? But why the second sign? First, Chatham is expensive. I get that. I lead the Americas audit function at a major multinational, so I'm used to looking at ways to maximize resources. One, we need to cut standard expenses as the current administrator has been doing. 2, we need to get more revenue from non-tax sources. And 3, we need to look at ways to continue combining services with other localities. But you don't grow a business or a town by cutting costs only. I believe we need to leverage our strengths, and one of those is open space. The current master plan discusses the creation and growth of a green corridor in Chatham and ways to link green spaces that we have in Chatham. I believe we need to revisit those portions of the master plan as well as the master plan overall in collaboration with the community. But you don't get to keep control over your green spaces if you lose your builder's remedy immunity. Without that immunity, we face massive development in Noe Pond and other locations. As I'm sure we'll discuss more tonight, Mark and Ashley were willing to risk that immunity, and we're unwilling to find funds to pay for costs associated with protecting that immunity. So bottom line, Ami and I are fiscally prudent. You can count on that. Ami and I are focused on our green space, and Ami and I will leverage what we've learned and applied in our schools in greater amounts to our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, our next speaker is Ami Shah.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Ami Shah. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, my fellow candidates for being here, and for everyone watching. I'm looking forward to an engaging, substantive, and civil debate. Now, what's really important to me and to so many people that I've spoken to is that we protect what we love about our township. I want to protect our township from overdevelopment and make sure that our zoning remains within the purview of us residents. I want to make sure that we have clean air, clean parks, and clean water for us and our families. I want to make sure that we continue to secure outside sources of revenue to help alleviate the burdens on us residents. And I want to highlight the bonds that connect us as neighbors rather than focusing on what divides us. I moved to Chatham Township a few years ago with my family because, like many other families, we were drawn to its beautiful landscape, its family-friendly culture, and its top-rated schools. And after my first baby was born here last year, it became just even more apparent to me just how critical it is to make sure that we secure the future of our township and set it up for success. I'm a neighbor, friend, wife, mother, attorney, but what you need to know about me really isn't just in those labels. It's fundamentally what I believe is that facts and people matter over politics. Phil and I are not interested in speaking or repeating the divisive rhetoric heard at the national level because that has no place in local politics or in our township. At the township committee and at the local level, the concern should be about our air, our water, our infrastructure, and whether or not we're leaving a town as good for our children as it is to us right now. And right now that's under threat with recent issues affecting the township. We're at a critical juncture in our township's history. We have an outdated master plan. We've got dried up revenue streams, dated infrastructure, and we're facing the threat of overdevelopment. And we need committee members with the right temperament, the right qualifications, and with the vision for the entire township as a whole, not just select neighborhoods. As an attorney, I'm constantly evaluating and protecting against risk while at the same time ensuring there's growth.
Thank you.
Very successful at negotiating for the best possible outcome in any circumstance.
You have to finish now.
Yep, and when things get bumpy, I won't back down for my client, and I won't back down for the township.
The next speaker, please stop when you see the red, or if you miss seeing it, I will remind you. Okay. And last opening statement is from Mark Hamilton.
Thank you. I want to thank the sponsors for putting this event together and providing us this opportunity to speak to the residents of Chatham Township. My wife Lauren and I have lived here in the Chathams, first in the borough and later here in the township for more than 15 years. And our teenage daughters have lived here their whole lives. And my goal in running for the Township Committee is a simple one. I want to protect the citizens of Chatham Township and the people who have built their lives here. I've lived here for a long time, but I didn't grow up in Chatham. I grew up not too far from here, a place called Montclair. And we all know what's going on in Montclair. That's why when it came time for Lauren and I to choose where we were going to raise our family, we chose Chatham Township. It broke my heart when my parents were forced to leave their home in Montclair when ever-increasing property taxes ended up saddling them with monthly bills that far exceeded the mortgage that they had worked so hard to pay down. And I'm not going to let that happen to Chatham seniors. But unfortunately, the Township Committee has taken a turn in recent years in the wrong direction. And if we don't change course, we could end up being the next Montclair. I believe that we need to focus on responsible government policy that is focused on conservative budgeting based on the actual resources available to the Township Committee, and not what they think they could squeeze out of the township's residents or find in unidentified additional revenue sources. And these philosophies go hand in glove with the biggest issue facing the community right now, the affordable housing situation. There's an opportunity for the next committee to get this deal done, but it's going to require a new approach, a business-minded approach from leadership who understands the issues, not more of the same. If you have attended any township committee meeting in the last year, you have seen Ashley and I taking the lead on speaking out for the residents and averting various disastrous plans. We've done that in our capacity as private citizens, and we look forward to bringing that leadership onto the committee as members.
Thank you
very much. I look forward to
time is up. Thank you. And we're ready to go into part two. And questions that I will be asking have been submitted ahead of time by you, the residents, and chosen for tonight by a team of league members to avoid duplication, to offer a variety of topics, and to avoid any questions that are of personal nature or not in the purview of the office of Township Council. So we are ready to begin, and I'm going to do random asking so that we don't do the same order all the time. And the first question, we were going to start with Ami, and here we go. There has not been much investment in our town. What are the top infrastructure issues we are facing, and what capital investments would you make?
Well, I think a lot of this will be driven by our affordable housing obligation, right? We've got the cost of construction, we've got the cost of land. I mean, what I would like to focus on is for us to fix our roads, to fix our dated infrastructure. Our municipal building and our police station are both, out of date and out of code. So I'd like to bring those up. We want to fix our water infrastructure. We've got dated systems. So those are the things that I would like to work on. But really, the issue is that we're in this position because of what's happened in past prior township committees. And we need to make a proper plan for the future.
Thank you. Ashley, you're next. Ashley, you're muted, please.
Yes, I'm sorry. When it comes to our infrastructure, of course, we absolutely have to maintain our roads, our sidewalks. But I think sidewalks is one of the areas that I think we should focus on, is our existing sidewalks that need to be repaired and maintained, and the municipal building as well as the police station, of course, like that's first and foremost. I didn't understand the water infrastructure that was just mentioned. I thought we have pretty clean water, but I mean, I'd rather spend the money personally on preserving our open space. I think that's more important, and we can have our open space society that comes and preserves it.
Okay, thank you. Next, same question, Mark. Mark, you have to keep unmuted so we don't have to keep asking you, please.
I'm trained to remain on mute when I'm not speaking on Zoom. So I'm sorry, I do this all day, and it's just forced habit. But I'm pretty proud of the way that our infrastructure has been maintained. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but the roads in Chatham Township are pretty good compared to most of the surrounding communities, in my opinion. And I think that's because we've been reasonable in our efforts to maintain these facilities, and we'll continue to do so. But it all ties back to the core issue that I think is driving everything, which is responsible budgeting and spending based on the resources that are available to the town. Now, in excess of 98% of the town's revenue comes from residential property taxes. That's just a fact. And it's an immutable fact that's not going to change. And so it's the committee's responsibility to steward that money wisely. And when you go around purchasing properties and doing things that don't improve the infrastructure, that doesn't help. So I believe that a fiscally prudent approach to maintaining and growing our open space, keeping the quality of roads that we already have, and continuing our equipment sharing program with surrounding communities to achieve these goals are good tasks that should continue.
Good, great, thank you. And Phil.
Yeah, thank you. I think on a lot of these points, we actually agree a lot in the sense that the township needs to figure out what are its main sources of infrastructure and what's it going to cost to maintain those over the long term. And one of the things that I've been talking about since the very beginning is updating our master plan. And our master plan talks about some of these resources, but doesn't have a real sense, how are we going to fund these buildings and this infrastructure over the longer term? So from my point of view, the township, the municipal building and the police building are two key resources for our community that we need to focus on and we need to prepare a plan for over the longer term. And I think, to be honest, in the past, it's been year to year. And one year we're fixing the roof, the other year we're doing this, but ultimately we don't have a long-term capital plan for the community, and I think we need to develop that.
Okay, thank you. Is that a rebuttal, Ami?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to answer Ashley's question. So what I was talking about specifically was our stormwater easements and drainage. A lot of our stormwater infrastructure is more than 50 years old, and it's built to a lower standard. So as a result, some residents are experiencing issues with their water. So, you know, that would hopefully be something one day that we can look at and improve, right?
Thank you. Yep. Okay, great. 30 seconds goes pretty quickly. Question 2, we're going to start with Phil. Township residents will be hit with a 12% tax increase and a reduction in surplus. What would you do in order to maintain flat taxes and avoid a reduction in surplus? And please be specific.
So I think it's important to look at the tax topic, let's say in a little bit more detail. The total tax that residents pay for municipal service is a very small part of their overall tax. So the numbers are misleading. They're real and they're not insignificant, but they're not huge in that sense. There are ways to cut costs. Certainly the town administrator has been cutting costs around telecoms charges. We've had a reduction in our overall electrical charges at the municipal building. I think we need to continually be looking at sharing more services with local municipalities so as to reduce the burden on ours and spread that cost over a larger, let's say, a larger base. So in that sense, I don't see a crisis in the operating budgets of our town these past few years. They've been more or less flat, as well as this year's budget, which was, by the way, unanimously approved by the Township Committee. But obviously, we do need to think about that long term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ami, same question.
Sure. So I think one thing that we need to bring up is how did we get here, right, to this 12.6% tax increase and a reduced surplus? And it's really just a direct result of poor planning from past township committees, right? They kept increasing their use of the surplus, even though anticipated reduction in revenue and increased expenses would indicate that they couldn't replenish it, right? And then there were missed opportunities to collect additional sources of revenue, like developers' fees, even though an ordinance was passed in 2008, which could provided us with millions of dollars towards our affordable housing obligation. So, you know, I think, you know, moving forward, really, the plan is we need to put a proper plan in place, and we need to continue to secure outside sources of revenue to help alleviate the burden on our town, on our residents.
Okay, thank you. Ashley.
Yes, I'm here. I just disagree with both of the comments that were just made. I think that it is a big deal. 12.6% is a huge amount. And I think our municipal taxes are the taxes that we have the most control over. And when our taxes are being raised at the state level, whether it's increases of tax at the gas tank and at our tolls, we can't really personally control that, but we do have influence at the state level. And a couple $100 of municipal tax increase may not be a lot for someone like you and me where we're young, but for the elderly who are on fixed income, it's a huge deal.
Okay, thank you. Mark.
Hey, yeah, so obviously Ashley and I share a lot of the same views on these things, and I couldn't agree more that a 12.6% increase in the municipal Chatham only tax, the tax that we get to control in 1 year, is a big deal. I think some people have thrown numbers out there to make it seem like it's not a big deal. Like if you have $1 million property, it's another $300. Like that sounds interesting. But a lot of people in Chatham Township who have quote unquote $1 million properties are seniors who paid way less than $1 million for that property. And now they're on a fixed income, and $300 is a big deal to them. And I just want to say something about developer fees too. Developer fees are taxes. Okay, developers are smart people, and when they assess a property, say an older home in the Rolling Hills neighborhood, and they think how much they're going to pay for that property, if they know they're getting hit with a developer fee when they try and develop that property, they're not eating that. It's deducted immediately from the value of that homeowner's property, who is almost invariably a senior. And I think that's a really bad idea.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Ami.
Thanks. I'd just like to make one point. I never said that I didn't think a 12.6% tax increase wasn't a big deal or that it's not a big increase. I personally don't want to spend additional dollar having to pay taxes. I don't think anybody does. So I'd like to make that point very clear. My whole point was this is why we got here and what are we going to do now moving forward? You know, I still think that.
That's it. Watch the, keep your eye on the timer. We're going to the next question, and Ashley, you're going to be the first responder on this one. Part of the role of a local official is to serve as the eyes and ears on the ground for our congressional representative and senators. So many people in our community are suffering from economic hardship due to the current pandemic. Many jobs are not coming back. There are food lines and mortgages not being paid, even in Chatham. What would you serve as an advocate to our Congresswoman, whoever she is, and senators on the need for additional or recurring federal stimulus payments to citizens in our community?
Absolutely. There's
Ashley?
no question about that. I was a small business owner. I know what it feels like. I know what it's like to have people's livelihoods being dependent upon me. I had about 55 of them, and it's hard, and it's a lot of weight that you carry on every single day. And I can't possibly imagine what it's like having a business right now where there's employees that that are relying on you and your business that has been forced to be closed for months. So absolutely, I would be their biggest advocate. There is no question about that.
Okay, thank you. Mark, next.
Yeah, I think obviously a lot of what you said is true. You know, when it comes to government, you know, it starts at the local level, and the primary responsibility for a committee member is to advocate for the best interests of the people of Chatham Township. I've been doing that actively for a long time in my free time in a volunteer capacity as a private citizen. And I look to bring that leadership onto the committee and to liaise with whoever it has to be, whether it's the Morris County freeholders, whether it's our congressperson, whether it's our senator, whether it's our governor, who currently is playing politics with COVID and withholding money that has been authorized by the Congress. And Morris County is not getting any of that money. And that's more of a county issue than a township issue, but I definitely plan to focus on the issues in Chatham Township and do what I can to help Chatham Township's residents, but that will involve reaching out to any and all higher level politicians whenever I think that that's appropriate.
Thank you. Phil.
Thank you. Likewise, would feel strongly that as representatives of the community, we need to be representing our constituents in front of other government entities that have funds to support. I want to take it a step further and say that as far as I can tell, unlike the borough in Chatham Township, we don't have a business advisory committee. And I think that's something that we need to do. And certainly I'm surprised that we haven't done it yet, frankly. But that is a way that I think that we as committee members can learn more about the needs of local businesses in our local community. And then in turn, in a smart way, find ways to bring some of that federal and state funding back to Chatham.
Thank you. Ami. I'll come back to you, Mark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Just like everyone else said, absolutely. I would absolutely work with our Congresswoman, whoever she would be, to make sure that our residents have the federal funding that they need for the health and their small businesses. Phil and I have plans in place for how we can reach out to our small business community here in Chatham Township, and hopefully set up an advisory committee to help bring them into the conversation. I personally think that our Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill is doing a fantastic job, and Phil and I are very honored to have her support for our ticket.
Thank you. The next question, Mark wanted a 30-second rebuttal. Go ahead.
I did have just a quick point on that, and I don't mean to be flippant at all, but the simple fact is Chatham Township is is a somewhat unique community in the fact that we have very few small businesses here. And when this is a residential community, this is a community of individual families living and raising their families. Most of our business activity, save for ShopRite and CVS and Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and a few other companies I think know how to run themselves, are focused on the residents.
Mark, I'm not gonna let you do a 30-second rebuttal if you can't keep to the 30 seconds. That was the rules that we all agreed with. You're on first for the next question. When or if is it appropriate to use the powers of eminent domain against property in Chatham? Do you support condemnation of private property?
Well, that's a simple yes or no question, and the way you phrased it, and the answer is no. I am not an advocate for condemnation of private property for public use generally. I understand that it's a principle, a legal principle that exists, and sometimes it has to be used. But as a matter of my personal philosophy, I do not support the use of taking a private property for public use. In fact, that's why when the current committee, the majority of the current committee was out there threatening to execute eminent domain on a private resident out on River Road for the purposes of affordable housing, I was there, even though I don't live anywhere near that neighborhood. I don't even know that woman standing up against that. That said, in the commercial business district, and I know we're talking specifically about the 522 Southern Boulevard site, I advocate for a private business solution. And I think with good leadership, it can get done. But in that instance, if the only way to satisfy our affordable housing obligation is to consider that option, I'd be willing to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. And the question is when or if it is appropriate. When or if. It's not just a yes or no. Anyways, next response is from Phil.
Yeah, I think like Mark, I would take the view that in general, eminent domain is a power of the state that's to be used very sparingly. And that has to do with how we organize ourselves as a society and as a free market and as a private property focused society. And I'm fine with that. In some cases, like in the Charlie Brown site, I think it makes sense for the township to use eminent domain if it's necessary and if the current negotiations are not successful. This is a property that was for sale, had a for sale sign in front of it, and the township is committed and has stated publicly that it's committed to giving a fair price. And so in that context, I think it makes sense. In other contexts, I would be much more worried with the use of that power.
Ami?
Yes, I second, and Phil and also Mark, I would never advocate for the condemnation of private property, never. I think that in this instance with Charlie Brown's, as Phil mentioned, it is up for sale. And while I would love to see a private business solution happen, I do think because this commercial property is also up for sale, that condemnation might be appropriate in order to secure the property for affordable housing obligation.
Okay, thank you. Ashley?
First of all, I also do not agree with eminent domain unless in extreme situations. With Charlie Brown's, it was not up for sale. There was no for sale sign. This for sale sign came up the day after Mike Kelly announced that they were considering using eminent domain on that property. That was a problem. And I think he kind of blew up the negotiations because of doing that. And I think he did it for political reasons. So I disagree with that. I was also disagreeing with it when they tried to do eminent domain on River Road, when it was an individual homeowner that they tried as well. And Mark and I were advocating against it there as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question, start with Ami. In the past, the township has not had any long-term planning in place. Recently, this sort of long-term planning has started to take place. What kind of things do you see as long-term issues we need to start planning for now?
Well, first of all, I think we need to figure out what we're going to do about our outdated master plan. We as a community need to come together and figure out what we want our township to look like and what it's going to take for us to get there. We also need to plan for dried up revenue streams, and we need to figure out how we're going to bring money into the township and then address, what is a critical need and what is a want to have, and address the needs first and then continue with the wants to have in order to get our township to where we all want it to be.
Okay, thank you. And Phil, same question.
Thank you. So there's a range of things that are in the current master plan that are outdated. Mind you, we've reviewed the master plan from time to time, but ultimately it needs a comprehensive refresh. And for that, we need community involvement, and we need community involvement and conversation about all the aspects of that master plan. So here we're talking about green space, which are the properties that are most important to keep Chatham green and livable in the way that we like it now. We need to look about how we link those green spaces together thoughtfully with bike lanes and sidewalks and other ways that we have a connection throughout our community of those green spaces. We need a plan for our infrastructure. Our police station and our municipal building are old, and we can't just patch things along forever. We really need to sit down and have some difficult conversations, because in some sense, long-term planning means actually talking about big numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley?
Hi, yes. I disagree what was previously stated. I actually think that we have done long-term planning. I think that you can't achieve a AAA rating without long-term planning. I think for the past 10 years, we have, when we depleted our surplus, we always replenished it every single year. And the problem with this year was that it wasn't replenished and it was depleted to purchase property. So that is the problem, that we stopped long-term planning this year.
Okay, thank you. And Mark? Mark?
Sorry, I'm getting the hang of this. I obviously share Ashley's view with the fact that, it's easy to throw stones. People who haven't really been actively involved in the community, Amy and Ami and Phil seem like really nice and knowledgeable people, but they're a little bit new to this game. And I just disagree with the premise that there hasn't been sufficient long-term planning, and again, point to our AAA bond rating and credit rating that is the result of decades of good fiscal stewardship. What I'm hearing, and it's part of this plan, is throughout this debate is buzzwords from Phil and Ami, which are additional revenue, and I believe Phil just said difficult conversations and big numbers. And that's all well and good, but again, I can't stress this enough. Our only source of revenue is residential personal property taxes. When you're talking about big numbers and hard conversations and additional revenue, you're talking about taxes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question. I'm going to try to put a couple together. So, yes, Ami?
Yeah, can I just make a quick rebuttal?
Yes?
Quick. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to bring up a point to something that Ashley and Mark said. If we had proper planning in place, we wouldn't be in a situation where we've got outdated municipal building, an outdated police station, an outdated master plan. We wouldn't be up against a 12.6% tax increase, and we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now with our affordable housing obligation.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with Ashley on this question. Some residents have suggested that we should litigate affordable housing. Of course, that didn't work well for Englewood Cliffs. It may cost up to $20 million to build affordable housing and upwards of $10 million to acquire the Charlie Brown property. How do you plan to address Chatham's affordable housing crisis without bankrupting the town?
It's a good question. First and foremost, we have to talk to the builders, the property owners. We have to pick up the phone and actually negotiate and call them. And every time that the past couple of committee meetings, when someone has asked, have you spoken to the Silverman Group or the Kronos property owners? The answers have been no. We have to ask. We have to find out what their goals are. What do you want? And where can we work with you? And where can we find a solution that will make us happy, where we don't want massive development, where we want to keep everybody happy, but ultimately the affordable housing issue in New Jersey as a whole is problematic. And I can go on for that for a while, but I see my cards up.
Ami?
Yeah, first, I think we need to make sure that first and foremost, we hold on to our builder's remedy immunity so we don't end up like in a situation like Englewood Cliffs, right? And that we as residents can control the zoning in our township and decide where development is appropriate and how it's going to happen. I think another thing is that we need to collect developers' fees, which we've been starting to do this year. I mean, developers make hand over foot in this town, and they should be putting, we should be getting money from them to put towards our affordable housing obligation.
Okay. Mark?
Hi. Well, I questioned some of the numbers, but I don't think that's really what we're here for tonight. I certainly haven't heard that it's going to cost the township $10 million to acquire the Charlie Brown site, and I certainly hope that's not the case. And when I get on the committee, certainly wouldn't advocate paying that amount of money for that piece of property. But the fact is we need business-minded approach to negotiating these deals. That's what we need. We wasted a lot of time running around the town trying to throw up affordable housing developments here, there, and everywhere in the middle of single-family zoned communities. Now we've got a site. Now we've got to focus on bringing every force that we have to bear on the Kronos Group, the Silverman Group, who has purchased other properties in town, and negotiate a fair deal and get it done. And as far as, I know my time is running up, but as far as the builder's remedy goes, it's a commonly spread falsehood that anybody in this community advocated for builder's remedy litigation. That's just not what happened. I can talk about it later if you want.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, time is running out. I'm going to have to, they're such good questions.
They are good questions. Can I talk for this one, or?
You want to rebuttal?
I don't think I did the actual talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was looking at all these questions. They're so good. Go ahead.
They are good questions.
Yes.
Briefly, because I know you want to get to other questions, and I do too.
No.
I mean, the reason that we've got our backs against the wall is again, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but for a lack of planning and foresight on the topic. Affordable housing topics were eminently foreseeable for years. And yet here we find ourselves with our backs against the wall, with a monster developer looking to buy Noe and looking to do a builder's remedy lawsuit in our community, I would argue, given their past practice. And why are we here? Because we didn't plan for this kind of stuff. And so we need to do that. We need to look at that risk, not just in this particular instance, but long-term in our community. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's start with you on the next question. Oh, Ashley, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I disagree. I don't think that there was ever a time where anybody advocated to lose builder's remedy immunity. We said that we needed time to negotiate the deal and make sure that it's done properly. We were told over and over again by our committee members that there was no time and that we were out of time. And that, which is true, the judge at any point can take away builder's remedy immunity, but a builder's remedy lawsuit does not occur overnight. It does not magically, the second that you lose your immunity, you get a building that's massive the next day. Doesn't happen. It takes time.
Yeah. We're just doing one rebuttal because there's so many good questions. I'm going to go back to Phil for the next question. A major portion of Great Swamp National Wildlife Refuge lies within Chatham Township. What benefits does the refuge offer our community, and what, if any, are the town's responsibilities to support the refuge?
Well, I guess I want to say that the Great Swamp is the township's backyard. Yeah, it's an amazing resource for us, an amazing source of green space, an amazing place to walk our dogs, to go on hikes. They have an amazing community center there where my family and I have gone many times. So they are truly a great resource, one that I think we could leverage more as a community, to be honest. And I think that the Township Committee can find ways to really leverage our relationship with the Great Swamp to increase the participation in that Great Swamp by our current residents. Our responsibility is to look out for the Great Swamp, right? So we've got microplastics that have been detected in the Great Swamp. And in general, obviously the city and the township is encroaching on the Great Swamp. And I think it's our responsibility as a township committee really to think long-term, to think strategically, how do we leverage that and protect it?
Thank you. Ashley?
Yes. Well, the Great Swamp is the perfect open space buffer that we can't build on. And I think that's why a majority of us were so attracted to Chatham Township. It doesn't have that ability to be built on. But I think the perfect example of being used properly is Giralda Farms. You know, that was privately held, and they were able to work with Morris Township and Harding and Madison to really put together and preserve that massive piece of property, all without raising taxes. I think that was amazing. And I think we can do more things just like that. And that's what I would really advocate for.
Okay, Mark.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I'm sure it's not going to come as a big surprise to anybody at this point that Ashley and I tend to agree on some of these issues. And I think we all agree that the Great Swamp is one of the crown jewels of Chatham Township. And I'm sure we've all been there with our families. And I love the Great Swamp. I'm a big fan. As my daughters will tell you, I've dragged them out there many times. But these issues go hand in glove with other things. That's why it's an interesting topic to discuss. It has to do with your question about being communicating with our federal government counterparts. And obviously, if we see any problems with the Great Swamps, we're the eyes and ears on the ground to do that. And B, it has to do with this allegation, frankly, for lack of a better word, of poor planning by prior committees. The fact of the matter is the prior committee saw an opportunity for a massive piece of private property adjacent to the Great Swamp at Giralda Farms and undertook an incredible plan with the Township Committee, the Harding Committee, the Long Hill Township Committee, the Morris Township Committee, and protected that property with almost no taxpayer money.
Thank you. And finally, Ami.
Yeah, no, I would, I agree with what Phil and Ashley and Mark were saying. The Great Swamp is a huge asset for our township, and it's definitely a draw for why many of us moved here, right? Beautiful outdoors and trails. And as Phil said, there is a concern, right, about the effect on our water, and something we have to manage. But I'd want to use my time real quick just to touch on something that was previously said. Mark and Ashley are both on record for publicly advocating from either walking away from our 2018 settlement agreement, which would open us up to builders' remedy lawsuits, or questioning why we have to abide by it. And in fact, Ashley even wrote in an LTE that for 58 Myersville and for 476 to 490 River Road, the prospect of 100% affordable housing apartment building bordering single family properties is significantly worse than any loss of builders' remedy immunity. So I'm hoping that at some point we can get a little clarity on those positions.
Mark, you had your hand up first, 30 seconds.
I beat you to it, Ashley. This is what really happened. Okay. Immediately after last year's election, I'm talking days after last year's election, all of a sudden there was a plan to give away the municipal building and the 11-acre site on which it sits for free for affordable housing development in the middle of a residential community. When we went to try and oppose that plan, we were told again and again by the current members of the committee, there is no choice. I said, let's pump the brakes on this. Let's look for an alternative. This is a bad idea. And we were told, you can't. It's either this or builder's remedy. And at that point, I didn't believe that, but it's called calling a bluff. I said, if those are the only two options, then I'll go with the builder's remedy before giving away this 11-acre property and ruining this neighborhood.
Thank you. Okay. Looking at the clock, I want to thank the people who sent in such great questions. And if yours didn't get answered tonight, it's because of time constraints. We're going to start with the last question before
Anyway, I can answer that. I got called out personally.
only one rebuttal. If you want to say something in your closing, fine. But we've got to start to close this up, and I don't want to miss out on this last question before we do final closings. Chatham Township has a reputation for being a white privileged town. What steps do you think we can take to better educate our residents and come together as a member of the global community on this issue? And I'd like to start with Mark.
Thank you. You were breaking up for a minute there. Could you please read the question again? I wasn't sure I heard you.
Sorry. Chatham Township has a reputation for being a white privileged town. Steps do you think we can take to better educate our residents and come together as a member of the global community on this issue?
Okay, well, to the extent that that question could be construed as implying that the people of Chatham Township are somehow not welcoming and not exceptional global citizens, I refute the premise entirely. I've lived in Chatham for more than 15 years, and I have never, ever encountered anyone who was prejudiced or bigoted or against anybody coming into this town. And we welcome everybody in this town. So I don't really accept the premise is the first thing. But of course, we can all do better. There's problems in this country. There's problems in this world. There's problems in this planet. And I believe that it does start at home and in our schools, with making sure that people are tolerant and inclusive and not divisive. And I think that we've done an excellent job doing that, regardless of what the demographic might be of this town. I don't really look at those kind of things. I've never met anybody in this town who does either. But all are welcome here, and I encourage that to be encouraged.
Thank you. Ashley.
Yes, thank you. I do not, first of all, I don't believe that there is a big race problem in Chatham Township. I think every person I've ever met in Chatham has been so warm, so welcoming, so completely just wonderful neighbors. So I have a hard time saying that these are racist, because I think when you call someone a racist, it's pretty much one of the worst things in the world that you can label someone. But going back to the last question that was addressed, I never, ever advocated for losing our builders remedy immunity. All I did was I said that if it would be okay if we lose it for a couple of months if we need to renegotiate, because there's no way a builder can possibly build in a 2-month period. They have to go through their own lawsuits, and that takes time. And that takes years, and we can draw that out for years. The committee and our opponents have been saying that it's basically fear mongering. The second that you lose your builder's remedy immunity, you're going to get 1,000 units next door. It's not going to happen.
Ashley, you've used your time. Thank you. Ami, the original question, last question of the evening.
Yes, I think we need to celebrate the diversity that we have in this township, and I've found a lot of it. I agree with what Ashley was saying. Everyone that I've met has been very kind and very neighborly, and that was one of the reasons we moved to this township. I think if we want to further embrace our diversities, there's definitely options for education, cultural involvement. I know things are hard during COVID, but there's ways to connect virtually to learn more about each other and focus more again on what binds us together rather than what divides us.
Thank you. Bill.
So on the issue of let's say the diversity in our community and respecting and valuing diversity, I want to agree with Mark that our schools are really pushing forward and need to push more on the topic of teaching our kids to be global citizens and to be aware of the greatness and the opportunities in the U.S., but also the challenges that we face from a social justice perspective. And so I'm glad about that aspect of it. I think as a township committee, we have the opportunity really to be a catalyst for more events that bring the community together. And I think, for example, our colony pool is a place where our community comes together as a community, as neighbors, and as friends And I think it is through Colony Pool or other community events and community resources that we really break through our differences. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, time for concluding statements, and you each get 2 minutes, and we're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. I'd like to start with Mark Hamilton. 2 minutes.
I don't think that's reverse alphabetical order, but reverse order from the openings, you mean, right? But, I get what you mean. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, for inviting us here tonight. I think this was really helpful and informative for everybody. And this is normally where a candidate would say, don't forget to vote. Get out there on election day and vote. But this is different because election day is here. It's election day right now. I encourage everybody to go out to vote right now. You could drive over to Madison and cast your ballot. And obviously, I hope that you will consider casting it for me and Ashley. You know, Phil and Ami have some nice sounding ideas, seem like really nice, smart, accomplished people, and I welcome them to the leadership in the community where Ashley and I have been out front for a long time now. But rather than look at ideas, I think you should look at what people have done. For more than a year, Ashley and I have been out front speaking up for you, defending the rights of Chatham Township citizens against crazy plans coming out of the current committee. And we were there when they wanted to give away the municipal building and ruin the Myersville neighborhood. We were there when they wanted to use eminent domain to take Carmela Sagendorf's house and ruin the River Road neighborhood. Okay, and we were leading the charge. That helped out the people up in Huron and Van Houten and everywhere else. And we were instrumental in getting us teed up to a position where we might be in the kill zone, for lack of a better word, to close this deal on affordable housing once and for all. Now, I'm proud of the stewardship that this community has had for the last, decade or more, as far as our budgeting and our planning and our preservation of open space. I think to the contrary of what is being said by Phil and Ami tonight is it's the current committee that in just the recent years has taken a turn in the wrong direction, which has depleted the surplus, has put our AAA rating at risk, has led to a 12.6% increase in our municipal taxes. That's going to hurt seniors. And we want to bring new leadership to the committee, not more of the same.
Thank you. Yes, you're not in alphabetical order. Forget what I said. Next is Phil. Phil, uncle.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark and Ashley as well, and the League of Women Voters for organizing the event. There's a lot of talk about incivility in Chatham politics, and yeah, it's a little sharp sometimes, but I think for us, at least I hope folks see it that way on my side, that we had a good civil conversation, and I do think there are differences in the way that we look at the topics, and that's how we should be as neighbors, and why at the very beginning, when we were organizing this, I asked that we use first names, right? So Mark and Ashley and Ami, we're neighbors, and together we can figure out what's best for the township. And we're going to disagree on some things, and certainly when Ami and I, if we're elected in the township committee, that's how we intend to be going forward. And that is neighbors who want to hear, who want to listen, who want to improve the township, and who know that we don't have all the answers. And as a group and as a community, we can find the best answers for Chatham. Now, at the very beginning, when I first put up my candidate statement, I put in there that I was for planning, and some people who are into politics would say, "Wow, that's super boring." But I think actually, in a town like Chatham, that really matters. It matters that our town master plan hasn't been truly and comprehensively updated in 10 years. It matters that our municipal infrastructure is dated and in need of repair or in need of a strategic vision for the future of those buildings, right? And so I would say those are the things that Ami and I are looking for and looking to do. And I can't help but say that I appreciate that you feel, Mark, that you were fighting for the township, but I would see it differently. I would see it as brinkmanship and really risking our builders' remedy immunity in a particular situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And
I chose to live in Chatham Township and not our surrounding towns because of the fruits of its measured fiscal governance. Those fruits are good schools, relatively low taxes, safe neighborhoods, and some of the smartest, kindest neighbors anywhere. Chatham Township has been historically balanced and with thoughtful debate and celebrated a diversity of thought that makes us all better. The township has never had an all-Democrat committee with 5 seats that are Democrats and no seats for other thoughts or alternatives. Under the current Democrat majority committee, for the past year, taxes have been raised double digits, and simultaneously our surplus has been depleted. Worse, they have signaled to us that more of the same is to come. Our opponents have championed these increases in taxes and spending instead of putting forth any thoughtful ways to cut spending. The 3 members of our committee that will continue to govern next year are Democrats and do not want to have to consider alternatives. Our opponents have agreed with their ideas, including their tax increase and surplus spending, which is why they endorse them with pleasure. We have to end the practice of consistently making decisions behind closed doors in executive session. We have to end specifically designing public portions of meetings to suppress resident participation. These tactics include virtual hearings with the ability to mute and not ask follow-up questions, or simply scheduling 2 hours of reports before any public comments can be made in hopes the public will lose interest. We must end the crowding out of better alternatives for our town. The only way you get to the best outcome for our town is through a thoughtful debate with differing perspectives. Mark and I have been thoughtfully debating this committee for the past year on behalf of the residents, and ultimately we have guided them in the proper direction. A vote for us is a vote for more thoughtful debate, diversity of thought, and not a rubber stamp.
Thank you. And finally, Ami.
No, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters, everyone watching tonight, and also the candidates. As Phil mentioned, we may have our differences, but it's nice to be able to come together as neighbors and talk about what we think is important for our township. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the township is going to get 2 attorneys. And so it really comes down to making sure those attorneys are the ones with the right temperament, the right vision, and bipartisan support. Mark was right. We don't want more of the same. Where we are in the township now isn't the result of this committee. It's look back. It's the result of prior township committees doing more of the same, which is what got us here. Poor planning, not saving, spending when we didn't replenish the surplus. And we need to have a proper plan in place moving forward, which Phil and I would do if elected. Also, it's not about who's the most vocal or who is on the scene first, which admittedly even tonight was when, some candidates tonight came onto the scene when their own backyard was involved, right? Or willing to trade immunity, builder's remedy immunity, which could affect the entire township to protect a neighborhood. It's about having committee members who understand that we need the immunity to protect the township as a whole, and who will look at the facts and evaluate them based on their impact for the township as a whole. And that's exactly what Phil and I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard from all the candidates. In closing, I'd like to thank them for wanting to serve the community. I want to thank the audience for tuning in and for sending in so many insightful questions. Thanks to the League of Women Voters and to the Morristown NAACP for putting this forum together. If you still need information on the candidates or anything else on your ballot, please go online to the award-winning nonpartisan league website, vote411.com. You should find information about all the candidates on the ballot and everything else you need to know about voting. And if you go to Vote 411, I have to say, you'll find information about the 3 public questions that are on the ballot. The State League has some pros and cons of each, but usually we take a nonpartisan view, but we are hoping that when you come to the public question 3 on fair districts, please consider voting no. It is your decision, but it is a proposed constitutional amendment, which is a permanent solution for temporary problems. So we urge you to vote no. And you can get more information on lwvnj.org. And lastly, I want to say that be patient on November 3rd. All the ballots will not be counted. So we have to have our patience. And stay safe. Thank you and good night.